at 5 o'clock. I rushed to the Fairfax post office just before it closed. I was sending a birthday card and a 2011 date book to Lane, who would be turning 47 3 weeks later. Each year, I sent him a calendar as part of his birthday present, and this one was monogrammed with his initials, LTG. On the front of the card was a picture of a cat balancing 6 stones on its head. The inscription inside the card said, "Welcome to the new age." We know now that at about 7 o'clock on that same night in Mexico, 5 o'clock our time, Lane was brutally murdered. He did, in fact, enter the new age. It is my deepest desire that he was greeted there by his adoring father and grandparents, that they embraced him and eased what I imagine might have been a very confusing transition to the afterlife. To write a eulogy for one's child is something that no parent should ever begin to imagine. To say goodbye to Lane is beyond belief. To encompass all of the memories of this sweet baby, this bold teenager, this optimistic adult, this adoring son, loyal brother, devoted lover, and friend is impossible. And yet here I am, trying in some small measure to encapsulate the life of Lane, who I will forever hold in the deepest reaches of my heart. Everyone who Lane loved clearly knew that as long as he was here, they were protected. They were safe. I have no doubt that all who loved him wished that they had been able to protect him as well. That his life was taken in a senseless and brutal way will forever be impossible to reconcile. That said, the journey that Reed was on for the past 41 days in Mexico, and his determination to find his brother and bring him home alive, has been a hero's journey. And that mirrors what I know his brother would have done for him. When Lane was a year old and Reed 3 and a half, our family moved from Oakland to Honolulu. A few months later, Lane came down with the croup and wound up in the hospital. His father, Howard, and I were frantic. So frightened were we of losing our precious baby, who was struggling to breathe. Hours before deciding whether to perform a tracheotomy, the doctors thought that perhaps the introduction of medicine into Lane's baby bottle would forego the need for surgery. But Lane clenched his jaw, trying not to take in the awful brew. The nurses, of course, were stronger and forced it down. Eventually, they got their way, and Lane recovered. But from that day forward, he insisted on feeding himself. From then on, symbolically, at this very young age, he seemed to take charge of his life. After that, it appeared that Lane was always on his own course, a very mellow little guy who knew where he was headed. Once, when he was 2 years old, my father, his grandpa Ted, was put in charge of babysitting for him one afternoon in Hawaii. Lane forged ahead of him to a place between rocks where dolphins swam near the shore. My father, frightened, tried to lure him back without making Lane stumble. He had no other choice but to quietly await his return. When Lane finally sauntered back to him on his own time, my relieved father dubbed him Big Shot Baby. A title that characterized both his strength and his vulnerability. Lane was loving, bold, thoughtful, charismatic, adventuresome, funny, and entrepreneurial. At 5, encouraged by his grandma Helen, he established a business selling rocks door to door to neighbors. Just ordinary pebbles and gravel that we found at the roadside and in our backyard in Orinda. He priced them at a nickel, a dime, and a quarter. When one neighbor asked to buy one of the dull, tan, unimpressive 25-cent rocks for a nickel, Lane wouldn't budge on the price. Why not, asked the neighbor. Because, said Lane, it's a 25-cent rock. This was a preview of the success he would have as a real estate agent 40 years later in Mexico. We moved many times during Reed and Lane's childhood. Oakland, Hawaii, Piedmont, Orinda, Moraga, Montana, San Anselmo. I know now how challenging it was for our children to make this adjustment. By the time Lane was a freshman at Sir Francis Drake High School, perhaps we had made one move too many. Lane was having a difficult time. After a year, it seemed that he could easily slip between the cracks. But he had the insight to ask to attend an alternative school, SWAS, on the Drake campus. There, inspired and challenged by his teachers who recognized his leadership abilities, Lane's life turned quickly around. A guy who on the first day of high school was caught smoking pot under the bleachers wound up president of his graduating class 4 years later. Last August, just 1 week before his disappearance, Lane attended his 29th SWAS high school reunion, connecting with old friends, some of whom he hadn't seen in almost 3 decades. The immeasurable joy and love he felt for his former classmates and they for him has been reflected in the outpouring of his community on Facebook. Lane told me just before he left to go home to Oaxaca that there was no way that he would wait years for another reunion. He was determined to make it happen next year. And I want his friends to know that I'm fully aware of how strongly the loss of their friend has impacted their lives. Lane was quite a force, and his love for you spills over even now. At 18, when Lane graduated from SWAS, he decided to take a year off before college and travel to Europe. He ran with the bulls in Spain, got his backpack ripped off in Ireland, slept one night in the train station in Paris. In Switzerland, he wrote, "Hello, Mrs. Gilbert. I'm happy that I'm having a fucking great time. I feel your spirit really strongly and I'm in great hands. Lots of excellent food, fondue, cordon bleu, roast beef. It goes on and on. My own room, my laundry done and ironed. Don't worry about this kid." From England, "Dear Mom, you would love it here. Peaceful, beautiful, and full of life and character. The people here have been wonderfully warm and friendly. The lady's maid comes to work and starts drinking Guinness. I feel wonderful, peaceful, and centered. I'm sending you enough love to spread around to everyone. Please do. I love you with all my heart. It has never been in doubt. Love, Lane. And from Italy, well, Mrs. never thought I'd be in Rome. Well, neither did I, but since it's me, I'm sure neither of us are very surprised. I happened to be on that train and I met someone I liked, so we came to Rome. It's incredible. The Colosseum, it goes on. The Vatican. Mom, I tell you, there is a God. I know it. It would blow you away. Museums, sculptures, the Sistine Chapel, all unbelievable. I'm doing great. It never occurs to me to feel any different, so I don't resist. All my love, of course. Your boy, Lane. Lane went to Oaxaca for the first time in 1984, a junior at UC Santa Cruz at the time. Lane wrote his thesis, Joven Pobre, a study about the poor children of Oaxaca. My purpose during the course of this research, he said, has been to integrate myself into another culture and to know the children. Not to be another gringo tourist passing through town, but to be part of the town, one of the people. The following year, he returned to Oaxaca and he fell in love with his partner of 25 years, David Perez. David and Lane made Oaxaca their